I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Mark, and my life took a turn I never expected. I've been married to Lisa for 7 years, and honestly, we had what I thought was a pretty solid relationship. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed we were on the same page. That's why, when things started feeling off around 6 months ago, I brushed it aside. I rationalized her late nights at work and her sudden need for me time. I told myself that life just gets busy sometimes, and we all need a little space. But then, I started noticing small things, changes in her behavior that felt like cracks in the facade of our life together. As her laughter drifted away, it was replaced by a sort of distant demeanor. I felt it first during our conversations, which had grown shorter and less meaningful. Lisa used to be so engaged when we talked about our days, but now she often seemed distracted, her phone buzzing with notifications she'd quickly dismiss. There were whispers of late nights spent working, which, in retrospect, should have set off alarm bells. Yet I wanted to trust her, and I did. When I think back now, it feels like it all happened so fast. One night I decided to record our conversations. I told myself it was for fun, to capture our memories. But I think deep down I was searching for something. Not just the sweet whispers of love, but also the truth behind the changes in her tone. On playback, she sounded perfect, like a loving wife who couldn't wait to return home. But in those moments, I felt the weight of something lurking beneath the surface, especially when she turned her back to me, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Then came the night that shattered everything. I had been working late myself, and as I walked into the quiet house, I noticed a strange scent lingering in the air. It was floral, but not a scent Lisa wore. I dismissed it at first, thinking maybe she had a new candle or some air freshener. But when I walked into the living room and caught sight of her phone lying on the couch, something compelled me to check it. It was an impulse I never thought I'd act on, but I did. What I found was a series of text messages from a number I didn't recognize. Flirty exchanges, blatant mentions of sex, and plans that didn't include me. I thought my heart would stop. My mind raced, replaying the late nights and distant conversations. Everything clicked into place. All those times I felt uneasy suddenly made sense. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. I confronted her that very night, my heart pounding in my chest. I was a mix of anger and disbelief as I laid everything out, showing her the messages. Lisa's reaction was a cold shock. Instead of the guilt I expected, she laughed it off. "It's just texting, Mark. You're being ridiculous," she said, her face twisted into a smirk that made my blood boil. I tried to reason with her, pointing out how her behavior had changed, how distant she had become. But she brushed me aside, throwing out excuses like "you're too busy" and "you just don't understand." As our argument escalated, I felt helpless, trapped in a web of her lies. I was angry, yes, but I was also hurt. I never imagined I'd be in a position where I had to fight for my marriage, let alone against someone I thought I knew so well. The confrontation left me shaken, filled with a sense of betrayal that only deepened with each passing moment. The woman I loved, who I thought would stand by me, was dismissing my pain like it was nothing. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing between fury and sorrow. I was angry at Lisa, but I was equally furious with myself for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. I felt as if I was on a roller coaster, riding through peaks of rage and valleys of despair. After that night, everything changed. I knew I had to make a decision. Would I fight for our marriage or let it go? And if I chose to fight, how would I do that? I didn't want to be that guy who stays in a loveless marriage, but the thought of walking away from everything we built felt like a death sentence. The love I had for Lisa was wrapped tightly around the heartbreak. I sat there, a storm of thoughts flooding through my mind, and I realized that I needed to take control. This wasn't just about her, it was about me. I had to figure out what I wanted from this mess. I wanted to heal, to move forward, whatever that looked like. That's where I was at, standing at a crossroads with a shattered heart, trying to piece together my next steps. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would take me far beyond the pain of infidelity, and into a realm of self-discovery I never anticipated. In the days that followed my confrontation with Lisa, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I was living in a fog, moving through my days on autopilot. Every conversation felt hollow, every interaction a reminder of the betrayal lurking beneath the surface. I continued to record our conversations, telling myself it was for clarity, but deep down, I was hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman I once knew. I wanted to understand how we got here, how Lisa could so easily slip into deception while claiming to love me. I remember one evening, I sat on the couch, my phone in hand, listening to the playback of our last argument. I picked apart every word, every tone. Her laughter rang through the speakers, seemingly unaffected by the chaos we were living in. I felt my stomach twist as I listened to her dismiss my concerns, framing my feelings as paranoia. It was like she was playing a character in a sitcom, a role that didn't align with the gravity of our situation. That realization stung. How could someone I trusted so much be so adept at lying? As I was lost in my thoughts, the door creaked open and Lisa stepped inside, her eyes bright and her hair perfectly styled as if she just walked off a magazine cover. I couldn't reconcile that image with the turmoil brewing between us. It was infuriating how she could put on a facade as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe, you okay?" she chirped, tossing her handbag onto the counter. I glared at her, the tension in the room palpable. "Yeah, I'm great," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just listening to your latest performance." She frowned at my tone, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" "You've been acting weird." That was the moment I realized that she had no idea how deep her betrayal cut. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand that this wasn't just acting weird. This was my life, my heart she was toying with. But I held back. I wanted to confront her again, but this time I needed to be strategic. I needed to gather more evidence, to show her the truth she was so adamantly denying. The following days morphed into a routine. I started taking notes on her behaviors, what time she left for work, when she came home, and the countless excuses she made. I reached out to some mutual friends, trying to piece together her whereabouts during the times I was alone. It felt surreal to be in espionage mode, but I was desperate for clarity. Each new detail felt like a breadcrumb leading deeper into the labyrinth of her deceit. Then came the turning point. One Friday evening, while Lisa was supposedly out with friends, I decided to follow her. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and I had to see it with my own eyes. I waited until she left the house, then slipped into my car and followed her. My heart raced with each block. I felt like a detective on a case. I trailed her through the city, my adrenaline spiking as I tried to keep my distance. The closer we got to the bar, the more my heart sank. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she laughed and chatted with a man I didn't recognize. I couldn't see his face, but the way she leaned into him made my blood run cold. They entered the bar and I sat there, torn between confronting her and protecting what was left of my dignity. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I replayed our entire relationship in my mind. The laughter, the dreams we shared, the promises made, all of it felt like a cruel joke. I pulled out my phone and recorded this moment, capturing the woman I thought I knew slipping away into the dark. Minutes passed like hours, and finally, I saw them exit the bar together. I felt a surge of rage and heartbreak as I watched them share a lingering hug just outside the door. The way she smiled at him, genuine, unguarded, was like a dagger to my chest. I wanted to scream, to run over there and confront them both, but I knew that would only escalate the situation. I had to remain calm. As they parted ways, Lisa walked back toward her car. I had to act fast. I started my engine and drove toward her, catching her off guard as she slid into the driver's seat. The moment her eyes met mine, I saw surprise flicker across her face, quickly replaced by a mask of defiance. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she shot back, her voice sharp. "Nice night out," I said, my tone steady though my heart pounded fiercely. She hesitated, and in that split second I knew she was caught. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us, the reality of our fractured relationship hanging between us like a chasm. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, I held up my phone, the video still rolling. Let's just watch, shall we? I said, my voice low but firm. Lisa's expression shifted from confusion to panic. She scrambled for words, but I wasn't giving her the chance. I played the clip back, her laughter ringing in the air like a cruel echo. I watched as her face turned pale, the realization of her lies crashing over her. "Mark, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, but I could see the cracks in her armor forming. "Really? Because it looks like you're out here cheating on me," I shot back, my voice laced with bitterness. The confrontation felt surreal, like a scene from a movie where the betrayed spouse finally gets their moment of truth. Lisa attempted to defend herself, weaving a web of half-truths and outright lies. But each excuse felt flimsy against the evidence I had just shown her. I was done with the games. The emotional weight of that moment began to sink in, and as I watched her squirm, something inside me shifted. I was no longer just the hurt husband. I was taking control. I realized that I needed to make decisions for myself, not just react to her antics. We stood there, locked in a battle of wills, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of empowerment amidst the chaos. I wouldn't allow her lies to define me any longer. It was time to consider what came next and how I would navigate the tangled web she had woven around our lives. The confrontation outside the bar felt like a turning point, but in the aftermath I was left facing a tangled web of emotions. Lisa, clearly rattled by my discovery, tried to spin her way out of the chaos she created. "Mark, you have to believe me. It was just a friendly outing. We were talking about work," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. I stood frozen, grappling with disbelief. Friendly? The way she had laughed with that guy, the way she had leaned into him, there was nothing friendly about it. My heart was a battlefield of anger and heartbreak as I processed her desperate attempts to gaslight me. "Don't insult my intelligence, Lisa. I saw the way you looked at him. Don't you dare pretend this is anything but what it is." Her facade of confidence was crumbling fast, and I could see her scrambling for a way to regain control. "Mark, please, you know how stressed I've been at work. I just needed someone to talk to." The audacity of her excuses made my blood boil. I had supported her through countless late nights and stressful deadlines, believing in her through it all. Yet here she was, betraying that trust in the most brutal way. "You could have talked to me. You chose to betray me instead." At that moment, I felt a mix of rage and sadness wash over me. The woman I thought I knew was slipping away before my eyes, replaced by someone who would lie to save her skin. I looked at her, searching for any glimmer of remorse, but all I saw was defiance. "I can't believe you'd rather lie than face the truth." The silence that followed hung heavily between us. I realized I was at a crucial juncture. I could either keep fighting with her, diving deeper into a toxic argument, or I could walk away and regroup. I chose the latter, turning on my heel. "I need time to think. I can't do this right now," I said, my voice steady though my insides were churning. I drove home with a sense of urgency, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of lies and deceit. The entire ride was a whirlwind of thoughts racing through my mind. I felt betrayed, angry, but also confused about where we stood. Once home, I sank down onto the couch, my fingers gripping my phone. I replayed the video of our confrontation, analyzing her every reaction. There was a strange comfort in seeing her rattled, but it didn't last long. The reality was that she had crossed a line, and I had to decide what I was going to do about it. The following days were a mix of avoidance and scrutiny. Lisa was on her best behavior, trying to play the role of the remorseful wife while I was left reeling from the betrayal. She apologized profusely, weaving tales of how it was a one-time mistake and how she'd never do it again. But every time she spoke, I could hear the deception lurking just beneath the surface. "Mark, I love you," she would say, her voice melodic and sweet, but I started to question the authenticity behind those words. How could love coexist with betrayal? It felt like a contradiction I could no longer ignore. After a few days of this charade, I decided to confront her again. I was done playing the victim. It was time to take the reins of this messy situation. I needed to know what she truly felt and whether there was a chance to salvage our marriage or if it was time to cut my losses. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said one evening, my voice firm as I gestured for her to sit down on the couch. She looked up at me, confusion clouding her features. Is this about what happened? Because I've told you I'm sorry a million times. She replied, her tone defensive. It's not just about that. I want to understand what led you to this point. What was missing in our marriage that made you seek comfort elsewhere? I asked, trying to peel back the layers of her facade. For a moment her bravado faltered and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. It's not like I planned it, Mark. I was just feeling overwhelmed and he was there. He listened to me, she said, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. That was the moment I realized something important. She wasn't just apologizing, she was trying to justify her actions. So, you chose to betray me instead of coming to me for support. I pressed, hoping to dig deeper into her motivations. I guess I thought it would be easier, she stammered, her eyes darting away from mine, avoiding the weight of my gaze. You had your own stuff going on and I didn't want to burden you. Burden me? Lisa, we're married, you're never a burden to me. I would have dropped everything to help you through this. I said, the frustration bubbling to the surface. Her expression shifted slightly. Was that regret? Know that now? I didn't think it through, I just let everything spiral out of control. I was beginning to see the cracks in her reasoning, but doubt lingered. Do you want to fix this? Do you actually want our marriage to work? Because it doesn't seem like it when you keep making excuses. She hesitated, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw a glimpse of truth in her eyes. Of course I want to fix this. I love you, Mark. She insisted, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Love isn't enough anymore, Lisa. Trust is what we need, and right now I don't trust you. My words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The room fell silent. All I could hear was the sound of our breathing. I realized that this moment wasn't just about Lisa's infidelity. It was about me reclaiming my agency. I couldn't allow her to dictate the terms of our relationship any longer. I was tired of being the one who was hurt, tired of feeling like I was begging for scraps of honesty. I need time to think about what I want, I finally said, my heart heavy but resolute. You need to understand that this behavior has consequences. I'm not going to just forgive and forget. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. What does that mean? It means I need space to figure out if I can ever trust you again. I won't stick around while you figure out how to feel about me. I stood up, the weight of the conversation pressing on my shoulders. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had taken a stand, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. This was just the beginning of a long journey filled with self-discovery and painful truths. I had to explore my feelings, confront my hurt, and decide what I truly wanted moving forward. The only thing I knew for certain was that I was no longer going to be a passive player in my own life. I needed to reclaim my narrative, no matter how painful that journey might be. The days that followed my confrontation with Lisa were a blur of emotional turmoil. She was still living in the house, but it felt more like a battlefield than a home. Each morning, I would wake up and find myself staring at the ceiling, grappling with the reality of our crumbling marriage. I could hear her moving around the kitchen, but it felt like I was in a separate world, disconnected from the life we once shared. I decided to take some time away from the house. I needed space to breathe and think clearly, so I rented a small apartment a few blocks away. It felt strange to leave the home we had built together, but I needed the distance to gain some perspective. The first night in the new place was oddly liberating and terrifying at the same time. I spread my belongings across the small room, trying to make it feel like home, but it was just a temporary refuge from the storm. During the days, I found myself lost in thought. I took long walks around the neighborhood, trying to clear my mind. I spoke to friends who had been in similar situations, seeking advice on how to navigate this mess. Their stories varied, but a common theme emerged. Healing takes time, and sometimes the toughest choices lead to the best outcomes. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone, but it also reminded me how painful the path ahead would be. Meanwhile, Lisa was reaching out, trying to reconnect. She flooded my phone with messages, each one more desperate than the last. I miss you. Let's talk. I can't stand this silence. At first, I ignored her texts, feeling an overwhelming urge to block her number entirely. But I knew that shutting her out completely wouldn't solve anything. So, I kept the lines of communication open, but I remained guarded. One evening, as I sat on the small balcony of my apartment, I finally decided to respond. I texted her, "I need time, Lisa. I'm not ready to talk yet. I'm still processing everything." She replied almost immediately, "I understand. Just know that I'm here whenever you're ready." It was a simple message, but I could sense the underlying desperation. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to reassure her that everything would be okay, but another part of me resisted. I couldn't be the one to shoulder her pain when I was still grappling with my own. On the weekend, I took a break from my thoughts by immersing myself in hobbies I had neglected for years. I picked up my guitar, something I hadn't touched since before the marriage. The strings felt foreign against my fingertips, but as I strummed a few chords, I could feel a sense of release. Music had always been my escape, and in those moments I found solace. It was therapeutic to express my emotions through song, even if the lyrics were born from heartbreak. But Lisa was never far from my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to confront her once more. It was one thing to distance myself physically, but I still had lingering questions about her motivations and whether there was any real remorse beneath her words. I set a date to meet her at a coffee shop, a neutral space where we could talk without the weight of our home hanging over us. When the day arrived, I felt anxious but determined. I had spent the week crafting a mental outline of what I wanted to discuss: the betrayal, the impact it had on me, and the possibility of rebuilding trust. I arrived early to collect my thoughts, ordering a black coffee and sitting at a corner table. The atmosphere buzzed with the chatter of other patrons, but my focus was solely on the door, waiting for her to arrive. When Lisa walked in, she looked different, vulnerable, almost fragile. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a look of trepidation. I motioned for her to join me, and as she sat down, I noticed the way her hands trembled slightly. It was a stark contrast to the defiant woman I confronted days earlier. "Thanks for meeting me," she said softly, her eyes darting around the room. "Let's get straight to it," I replied, cutting through the small talk. "I need to understand what you were thinking. Why did you choose to cheat?" The question hung heavy in the air, and I watched as her expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. "Mark, I never meant to hurt you. I was feeling so lost, like I wasn't enough, and when he showed me attention—" Her voice trailed off, and I could see the regret flicker in her eyes. "Attention? So you thought cheating was the answer?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "I thought it would make me feel better," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But it only made things worse. I was selfish and stupid." Her admission hung there, and I felt a mixture of anger and pity. "You could have come to me, Lisa. You could have told me you were struggling, and we could have worked through it together." I know," she said, almost pleading. "I was scared. I thought you would leave me if I showed any weakness." That struck a chord. I had always believed in vulnerability, in being honest about struggles, but I couldn't deny that I had my own moments of emotional distance. "But you pushed me away. You made the choice to betray my trust instead of reaching out. I was afraid of losing you, and in trying to protect myself, I ended up destroying everything," she said, tears forming in her eyes. Seeing her cry was a strange experience. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but another part felt hardened by the betrayal. "You have to understand that this isn't just about you anymore. I'm hurt, Lisa. I'm angry, and I don't know if I can get past this." "I'll do anything," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll go to counseling. I'll show you that I can change." Her desperation gnawed at my heart. I wanted to believe her, but the pain was still fresh. "Counseling is a start, but trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's going to take time, and I need to figure out if I even want to try." "I'll wait," she said, her voice steadier now. "I'll wait as long as it takes, even if it means you need your space." We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in our thoughts. I realized that while Lisa's words were filled with remorse, the battle ahead wouldn't just be about her changing. It was about me learning to trust again, learning to forgive. Finally, I spoke. "I need time to think. I'll reach out when I'm ready." As I left the coffee shop, I felt an odd sense of clarity. It was a step forward, but it was also just the beginning of a long journey. I knew I had to protect my heart while also giving her a chance to prove herself. It wouldn't be easy, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but I was willing to explore where it might lead. For the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope. I was reclaiming my narrative, ready to face whatever came next. The next few weeks were a mix of tension and cautious optimism. Lisa started seeing a therapist, and I could sense her genuine effort to address her behavior. She was making changes, from being more transparent about her whereabouts to openly discussing her emotions with me. I appreciated the effort, but deep down, I was still wrestling with the pain of betrayal. Trust is a fragile thing, and even though she was trying, I couldn't shake the feeling of being on shaky ground. We had established a sort of routine. Our conversations grew incrementally more comfortable, but they were still peppered with underlying tension. Lisa would often ask me how I was feeling, and I appreciated her concern, but each inquiry felt like a reminder of what had happened. I was trying to navigate my feelings carefully, not wanting to rush into forgiveness, but also recognizing that healing was a process. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I noticed how Lisa leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it made my heart race. Part of me wanted to push her away, to guard myself against any semblance of intimacy, while another part craved the connection we once shared. I was caught between my desire to go back to the way things were and the reality that things could never be the same again. I had been journaling, trying to sort through my thoughts and feelings, and one entry struck me particularly hard. I wrote about the importance of boundaries, about protecting myself while still allowing for growth in our relationship. I realized that I needed to set clear expectations if we were to move forward. It was a daunting task, but I knew it was essential. One Thursday night, after a particularly good dinner together, I decided it was time to talk. "Lisa, can we sit down and have a serious conversation?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. She put down her fork, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Of course, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about us and where we're headed. I appreciate everything you've been doing to fix things, but I need to lay out some boundaries." Her expression shifted slightly, and I could see the mix of hope and apprehension in her eyes. "What kind of boundaries?" "I need to know that you're committed to being open and honest with me. No more secrets, no more lies, and I need time to process my feelings. It might take a while for me to fully trust you again." "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm serious about making things right. And I need you to understand that if you ever cross that line again, it will be the end for us. I can't go through this pain again." I continued, my voice firm but not unkind. "I understand, Mark. I don't want to lose you. I wish I could take back what I did," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We spent the rest of the evening discussing our feelings more openly than we had in a long time. It felt good to communicate, but the nagging doubt lingered in my mind. Could we truly rebuild what had been broken? The weeks rolled on, and as the days turned into months, I started to notice changes not just in her behavior but in my own feelings as well. I began to let my guard down incrementally, allowing glimpses of the love I once felt to return. We would go for walks together, share dinners, and even laugh at old inside jokes. Yet I still felt like I was walking on a tightrope, teetering between past pain and a hopeful future. One evening, we decided to take a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I thought it would be a good way to reconnect away from the distractions of our everyday lives. As we drove, the scenery shifted from the city's chaos to the serene beauty of nature. The air was crisp, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace settle in. When we arrived, the cabin was cozy and inviting, a contrast to the whirlwind of emotions that had defined our relationship for so long. As the night fell, we lit a fire in the fireplace, creating a warm glow that danced around the room. I felt a flicker of hope reignite within me. Perhaps this getaway could be a reset for us, a chance to truly start over. We spent the evening talking, sharing memories, and even discussing our dreams for the future. Lisa opened up about her struggles with self-worth, how she had felt inadequate in our marriage, and how that had led to her poor choices. I listened intently, realizing that her journey was complex, just as mine was. We were both flawed, but we were also both capable of change. As the fire crackled, the conversation took a different turn. I decided to share my own insecurities, how I had felt abandoned during her late nights away, and how her actions had shattered my trust. I could see the realization wash over her as I spoke, and for the first time, I felt like we were on equal footing, both vulnerable and willing to be honest about our pain. That night, as we retreated to the bedroom, I felt a mix of apprehension and excitement. I was nervous about intimacy, unsure how to navigate that aspect of our relationship after everything that had happened. But as Lisa leaned in closer, her eyes searching mine, I felt a spark of familiarity, a glimpse of what we had once shared. We kissed hesitantly at first, and then I felt the warmth of connection returning. It was a slow and tender exploration of what we used to be, a cautious journey toward rebuilding intimacy. I could feel my heart opening up again, and in that moment I realized that perhaps forgiveness was possible. I didn't have to forget what had happened, but I could choose to embrace the possibility of a new beginning. As we lay together, wrapped in each other's arms, my heart raced with hope. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew there would be obstacles ahead, but the road to healing was starting to feel less daunting. We were taking steps together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we might just find our way back to each other. What I had learned through this experience was invaluable. Trust could be rebuilt, but it would require patience, understanding, and a commitment from both of us. I realized that love could endure through the darkest moments if we were willing to face our truths together. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a sense of tranquility settle within me. Maybe, just maybe, there was a light at the end of this long, winding tunnel. The cabin weekend marked a turning point in our journey, but as we returned to our daily lives, I knew that consistency would be key. The time away had been rejuvenating, but the real challenge lay ahead, in the routine of our lives, where old habits and insecurities could easily resurface. In the weeks following our trip, Lisa continued her therapy sessions, and I decided to join her for a few sessions of couples therapy. I had my reservations at first. Sharing our struggles with a stranger felt intimidating, but I recognized the value in having a neutral party help us navigate our conversations, especially since emotions ran so high between us. It was a daunting step, but I was committed to healing, both individually and together. During our first session, I felt a mixture of vulnerability and strength. As we sat across from the therapist, I could see Lisa fidgeting, her eyes darting around the room. "It's okay," I whispered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. I wanted her to know we were in this together, and I was willing to face whatever came our way. The therapist guided us through a series of questions, encouraging us to express our feelings openly. I started by addressing my feelings of betrayal and hurt, focusing on how Lisa's actions impacted me emotionally. I felt like I was living in a shadow of our former selves. I explained. Trust is a foundation, and it felt like it was crumbling beneath us. Lisa listened intently, her expression serious as she nodded, absorbing my words. "I understand, and I take full responsibility for what I did. I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice steady. I realize now that instead of reaching out, I acted out of fear. I thought I was protecting myself, but I ended up destroying what we had. Hearing her vulnerability in a safe space was a breakthrough for us. The therapist guided us to explore not only our pain but also our hopes for the future. By the end of the session, we had begun to outline specific goals, improving communication, establishing trust, and creating a deeper emotional connection. For the first time in a while, I felt like we were truly on the same team again. As the weeks turned into months, we continued our therapy sessions, and they became a cornerstone of our healing process. We learned how to express our emotions constructively, how to communicate effectively, and how to rebuild intimacy. Lisa made significant strides in understanding her emotions and motivations, while I worked on being more open about my feelings and fears. We also made an effort to prioritize quality time together. We started taking weekend hikes, cooking meals together, and even rekindling our love for music by going to live shows. Each small step felt monumental, like we were laying bricks back onto the foundation of our relationship. But the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were moments of doubt when I would catch myself questioning her commitment. I had to learn to silence that inner critic, to recognize that our past didn't define our potential future. And Lisa, too, faced her own struggles with guilt and anxiety, wondering if she truly deserved a second chance. One evening, while we were cooking dinner together, Lisa turned to me and said, "Mark, there are still days when I feel like I don't deserve your love after what I did. I'm working on it, but it's hard." I paused, setting down the knife I was using to chop vegetables. "It's going to take time, Lisa, but we're in this together and I believe we can overcome it." She smiled at me, and for a moment the weight of the world lifted off our shoulders. It was a reminder that healing isn't linear. It's a dance of progress and setbacks, and we both had to be patient with ourselves. One night, after a particularly good therapy session, we laid in bed talking about our future. "What do you want for us moving forward?" I asked, curious about her thoughts. "I want to build a life together that's filled with honesty and love," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "I want us to be stronger than we were before." Her words resonated deeply with me. I realized that while the betrayal would always be a part of our story, it didn't have to define us. "I want that too," I replied. "I want us to embrace our imperfections, to continue growing together." As we drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. We were still a work in progress, but the foundation of our relationship was starting to feel solid again. In reflecting on this journey, I learned that healing takes time, effort, and sometimes a willingness to confront the messiness of love. Trust can be rebuilt, but it requires vulnerability from both parties and the courage to face difficult truths. I realized that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant acknowledging the pain and choosing to love despite it. If there's one thing I would tell others facing similar struggles, it's this: don't shy away from the hard conversations. Lean into vulnerability and seek support, whether that's through therapy, friends, or open dialogue with your partner. It's in those moments of honesty that true healing can begin. As for Lisa and me, while we can't change the past, we're committed to building a future grounded in trust, love, and mutual respect. We're learning to navigate the complexities of our relationship, hand in hand, and I truly believe that brighter days lie ahead.